What's up, YouTube fans? Today we're going to do a comparison of the FansToys Warhorse with the Takara Tomy Ironhide. So these figures came out quite a few years apart. This is from 2016, 9 years ago. One of my very first reviews on this channel. And this guy just came out in October of 2025. So a lot of time between them. And I actually like both of these for different reasons. So regardless of the outcome of this comparison, I'll be keeping both, this one for robot and this one for vehicle mode. But as I always mention, I try to be as objective as possible in these comparisons, but of course there's subjectivity involved when you're comparing things like this. And if anyone tries to tell you different, that their comparison or review with opinion is unbiased and objective, then I would beg to differ, because anytime you give an opinion, it is of course going to be subjective. With that being said though, if I pick one and you prefer the other, then you win. I try to do these comparisons to help people decide what direction they want to go with their collection, including getting both of them, which is what I'm doing. With that being said, we're going to get started with the accessories, but I do want you to keep in mind that this figure has the Shadow Fisher upgrade kit. I don't think it's fair to compare it with an upgrade kit because it's not what came with the original figure. It changes it quite a bit. So here's what it comes with. This actually will install right here. We've replaced it with this part. The wheels now go on the back, and then this panel goes up here, which looks much nicer, much cleaner. But because this isn't here and this is the original part, you're just going to have to imagine that this is right here. The wheel still plugs in the back, but this is quite obtrusive in robot mode. So just imagine that for the rest of the review. But other than that, we'll do the comparison as we always do. And let's get started with the accessories. All right, here are all the accessories they come with. Now the FansToys, I don't have the sled separated from the robot. It's actually part of the robot, so I don't consider it a separate accessory. You can display it, you know, kind of like this, but it's not an accessory, so we're not going to count it here. There's a lot of stuff here. The Takara, you can mount everything on the sled just like the FansToys. There is a face down here. I'm going to include that, but let's compare them. They both get a over-the-shoulder missile launcher or cannon. The Takara is fully chrome. I just noticed it's fading here, but both look good. They both come with a chrome gun. Although, they're shaped differently. I have only just now noticed that. This one is horizontal, whereas this one's horizontal, this one's vertical. Anyway, they both have that. They both come with this dual blasters in silver paint. The Takara one's a little bit smaller, but you do get two for each. They both come with a jetpack done in silver. You also get, to go with the jetpack, some blast effects. The Takara has a little bit of white effect paint on it that looks nice, but they both work for that. The FansToys, the gun can fit the effects, whereas the Takara, it doesn't fit on any of the guns. It just is for the jetpack, but that doesn't change the number of accessories. All right, then now we're getting down to nitty gritty. So we've got the satellite dish, or I guess the radar, and I'll count that off with this welding gun or welding torch. Then we have these hands, nozzle hands. And again, I'll count that off with a couple of faces here. We have another pair of nozzles. And I'll cut that off with another pair of faces. Another pair of nozzles. And I'll cut that off with this gun, the drill gun. Now somebody told me that there was a way to get a die-cast drill gun. I never got it, but didn't come with the figure, so we're not going to count it here. The Takara comes with the sled. I'm going to count that off against this And this is actually part of the sled, but it doesn't really stand alone. You can't really use it on its own. So I'll count these together. And remember, we still have this face down here. The car comes with one alternate face, and the FansToys comes with this alternate head, which I guess is IDW. I didn't even know that. So basically a tie on the accessories, which is kind of funny after all of that. All right, next we'll talk about the gimmicks on these two. In robot mode, this definitely has the gimmick of being able to take the sled out of his chest. I don't love it. I don't think it's a necessary gimmick, but it does have that. The Takara in vehicle mode can store multiple weapons. You can store 2 guns underneath in the wheel wells, these guns. And you can also store a gun on top. So you have like a weapon storage, but also like a weapon just firing in vehicle mode. So I'm going to give them a tie on the gimmicks. I think they both have a gimmick here. I just don't love the FansToys gimmick, but it is there. All right, next we'll talk about the cartoon accuracy and the sculpt. In order to do that, we'll put the G1 image there so you can take a look for yourself. I think this one is a no-brainer. FansToys is going to take the cartoon accuracy. I think overall, it really screams, cartoon image. That's what they're going for. Takara, because they went for a more realistic vehicle, they've got the lights up here and the bumper, and that definitely stands out. It makes them look more tubby, right? A little bit bigger of a belly, and also just doesn't look like cartoon. Same for the panels here, and again, you got to remember this actually has this here, and that's not in the cartoon. It also takes away from the sculpt, to be honest. Having these panels on the side and the wheels on the back definitely are not as clean of a look. The FansToys is really clean. I think about the only thing that I think is not that clean is this panel right here, which was all done just for that gimmick of having the sled. But overall, very clean from the back. On the FansToys, very clean from the side. Takara, still a little bit messy. You got the glass here, you got the glass up there. From the front, Takara's okay, but again, you got to remember the panels there. So I'm going to give both cartoon accuracy and sculpt over to FansToys. Next, we'll talk about the paint on these two figures. And FansToys usually does win paint. Once again, this is a fully painted figure. Everything you see, the gunmetal, the red, the white for the face, the silver, all of that's painted. Takara also pretty much fully painted. The red, the face color, red you see here, the gunmetal, the silver, all of that is painted. And it looks quite nice. I am going to dock FansToys for having the paint that scrapes. You've got some up here. And that's a tolerance thing. Now, I can't ding them twice for that. So either it's going to be a ding here, or it's going to be a ding in the build quality. I think I'm going to take it out here at the paint point because it is a paint issue. So I'm going to say that Takara overall has the better paint just because they don't have that issue with tolerances. Next, we'll talk about the build quality on these two. And when it comes to the Takara, this is like one of the older figures that's built really nice and solid. I've transformed this dozens and dozens of times over the years. I transform for fun sometimes. And this one is just a fun, easy transformation. No issues, no parts breaking or anything like that. I still don't have anything loose. I would say the legs, sometimes people have loose legs, but I don't seem to have any issues on this one. For the FansToys, again, I've transformed this now 3 times back and forth. No issues, nothing's breaking other than the paint issue, which I already mentioned and I already dinged them for. So I'm going to give them a tie in build quality. Both of them are built really well. FansToys does have a lot more diecast. In fact, there's pretty much no diecast in the Takara. So that does make it feel different. But as far as the build itself, I think they're both fine. All right, next we'll take a look at the articulation. In order to do that, we'll articulate each one individually. For the FansToys, we have the head on a rotating swivel. It goes up to there and rotates around. I am missing the panel there, but I think that's a results may vary type of thing. I don't think anybody else, only a couple people, not everyone is missing that panel. Shoulders rotate around, out to the side on friction. Rotation at the bicep, it's pretty tight. Single jointed elbow gets you well past 90 degrees. So, pretty good articulation there. Rotation at the wrist. Individually articulated fingers on 1, 2 pins, and then thumbs on ball joint and a pin. And I've always liked the way FansToys does the hands, and these are no exception. They're well done. Coming down to the waist here, waist rotation on a ratchet. That works well. Ab crunch down to there. Unusual for FansToys, but you get nice ab crunch and rotation. Hip skirts will move out of the way, and the front, back, and sides. Legs will kick up to there on a ratchet. Back to there on a ratchet, hindered by the sculpt here. Rotation out to the side on a friction joint, but it holds very nicely. Rotation at the thigh on a universal. Double jointed knee, again, unusual for FansToys, but full bend pretty much on that. The top is a ratchet, the bottom is a friction joint. I've heard some people having issues with this. Mine is okay on both sides. I don't have any issue there. By the way, there is a screw. I meant to show it in my review. You really have to untransform the leg almost all the way. And then you can access this screw. It's right here on the inside. You can see a little bit of it right there. But if you're having an issue, loosen that screw and then tighten it back up. That should help. I know there's some people out there that had the issue. I just didn't have it. Ankle tilts out to there. Forward, down to there. For the Takara, head is on a ball joint, gets up to there, down to there. The neck panel itself can lift up, so there is a neck joint here on the Takara. Side to side, sometimes that face sculpt comes off, and then rotation. So this has a little bit more movement at the head than the FansToys. Shoulders rotate around on a ratchet joint. It is a weird joint because the way it works is there's this panel here and it gets caught up. You can get it all the way around. You just have to like rotate it out of the way. It's a really weird joint the way they did it. Out to the side on a ratchet, but actually gets you all the way up to there. Again, awkward joint. Rotation at the bicep. Single jointed elbow gets you 90 degrees. So it's less, same number of points of articulation, but less articulated than the FansToys. Your rotation at the wrist. Single pin for the hands. No individually articulated fingers. So FansToys is going to get the point for the hands at least. Rotation of the waist, no ab crunch. Back in the day, Takara didn't always give us ab crunch. This one doesn't have it. Hip skirts on the front. Leg can go up to there. Back to there, again, hindered by the sculpt. Out to the side on friction, it holds fine. Rotation at the thigh or on universal. Single jointed knee, 90 degrees. Ankle tilts out to there. And slight forward and backward. So because of the ab crunch, double jointed knees, articulated hands, I'm going to give it to FansToys. I think overall they've got more articulation. They've also got some more range of motion in a couple spots, namely the elbows. So I'm going to give articulation over to FansToys. Next, we'll talk about the transformation and engineering these two. When it comes to transformation, this again is a no-brainer. The FansToys is just not fun. You can get it there. It does work. But the Takara, quite enjoyable. After all these years, I still have it memorized. Very fun, very easy. Quick flip back and forth. And it works. So I'm going to give transformation over to Takara. I think I'm going to give engineering also over to Takara. They end up with a pretty good alt mode. Sometimes they have a compromised robot mode due to the simplicity of their transformations. I don't think this is compromised. I do think there's a couple spots where the sculpt isn't as good. But because they have a pretty darn good robot mode, pretty darn good alt mode, I think the engineering on this is over-engineered. It's too complex. It didn't need to be that complex, especially the gimmick to get the sled in there. That's totally unnecessary. They could have just done something like this, right? Just give us a separate sled. Nobody needs it to be integrated. So I'm going to give engineering to Takara as well. All right, there they both are in their alt modes. Pretty similar size overall. About the same with height and length. They both went with the translucent blue glass. And they both have stuff showing through. I guess I don't mind either of them. They're both fine. The Takara has a little bit extra detail. It's got the windshield wipers up here. Both have chrome lights, but the Takara has the chrome bumper. On the side, you've got the yellow stripe. I'm not sure if they've got the black outline on this one, and they don't on the FansToys. I think that does add to the look. Chrome wheels are nice on here. These are just plastic, but they have rubber tires over here. No side view mirrors on the Takara, but you do have it on the FansToys. On the back, taillights, they went with a more realistic look on the Takara. This is back when they're doing realistic alt modes. So you got the exhaust, they got the chrome bumper, translucent lights. I do tend to prefer the look of the Takara's alt modes. It's just more realistic looking. You also have some functionality because you can mount the weapons. If you prefer really any of them, you can take and just pop them in there. You also have storage down here for the weapons. The FansToys, you can't actually really fit any weapons on them. So even though I think the FansToys looks decent, I'm going to give it to Takara. I think overall they have better functionality and a more realistic and good looking vehicle overall. Next, we'll talk about the cost on these two. And as always, we're going to use the prices from ages 3 and up since they don't mess with it. And I'm finally going to include inflation since you guys have been asking for that. So Fantastic Model or FansToys comes in at $208 US. The Takara Masterpiece comes in at $99 US. And using the inflation calculator comes to $134 in today's prices. So Takara is going to win on cost. And the final factor in this comparison is the members' choice category. I asked members which one they prefer just based on their own personal preference and no other factors. And FansToys is going to dominate on this one. Not a surprise there. So final thoughts on the comparison. You can see the score, and Takara is going to take this one. And that is definitely a surprise to me. I didn't think they were going to win, but they really have held up all this time. It's one of the better versions of a Masterpiece Ironhide out there. Now, I will tell you personally, I'm planning to display the FansToys in robot mode. I just think it looks better overall, fits better in my collection. And then this will go into alt mode, just like all the other Takara figures that have been replaced by FansToys or by other third-party figures. It's going to end up in alt mode, and they do a good job on that. Now, during my review of this guy, I gave it a 3 out of 5, a partial recommendation. But just before that, I had reviewed the tracks, and I gave that a 4 out of 5. And somebody asked me, how could you give this guy a 3 out of 5, and it had a complex transformation similar to the tracks? And the answer is, the tracks didn't have paint chipping. This guy has a lot of paint chipping. There's really no way of avoiding it, specifically on this panel up here. A couple panels in the legs on the outside, and then specifically in the vehicle mode, you see there's a couple panels in the side of the van. And to me, that's kind of a flaw, right? If tolerances weren't done properly to avoid the paint chipping, or maybe the paint quality isn't there, red tends to chip a lot easier and is more noticeable than other colors. So that's another thing. Red paint just is tricky because it's thicker. And so that was one reason. The other thing, I was missing a neck panel here, and just out of box, that's kind of unsatisfying to have that. So for those reasons, I gave it a 3. But like I said, this is going to be my Ironhide. So I tend to weight, build, and paint, and things like that. Working properly higher than the overall look of the robot mode. I know a lot of people out there don't even transform these guys, right? They just take it out of the box, put it on the shelf as robot mode, pick their accessories, and then it never gets transformed. I know that. But for me, transformation is important. I do transform my figures. I do want to mess with them, and I don't want them to be paint chipping. So anyway, that's it for today. Thanks for watching, and thanks to Nick the Toy Guy for sending this, and we'll see you next time.